Hey, welcome back everybody. So today I've got kind of an interesting situation here. So I had a Scion TC that I purchased. It had a blown motor in it, and I bought a JDM motor and we put it in and got the car running. It was a really good little car. I drove it around, I was driving it to work. I just wanted something that I would get better mileage so I didn't have to drive my full-size truck every day. Well, anyway, so I don't really want to get into all that because that's a whole other deal, but it turned out good. So I came across a situation where I was like, well, you know, I have the Scion and it runs great. I'm a big fan of Toyotas anyway, so. But I was thinking, I remember thinking in the back of my mind, you know, it would be nice to have a little pickup. That way, if I did need to pick up some parts or whatever and run around town, I don't have to jump in the full-size truck and you know, it'd be easier to have a small pickup, because there was a couple situations where I needed to get some parts that really didn't fit in the Scion, so I was like, plus they were dirty. So anyway, I came across a deal where a guy wanted to buy the Scion. I didn't even have it for sale. He wanted to buy it, and he offered me a certain amount of money, and I'm like, I don't know about that. And he goes, hey, I'll throw this truck in too. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So get this, he's got, he says, I got this S10 pickup that my kid or something had, and it's got 79,000 original miles on it. He sent me a picture of it, and I was thinking, man, that truck is clean. So it's like a mid-80s S10. And so I made the deal, and then I had to go out of town. I got the title for the S10. He said, well, I'll bring the S10 over, you know, when you get back. So anyway, I get home today and the S10's sitting in the driveway. Now, I had asked him, I haven't even looked, I just looked at the truck, I haven't been out there yet. So I asked him, going back, I said, you know, what engine does it have in it? And he's like, oh, I don't know. Well, first off, it's like, are you a man? You know, how is it possible that you don't know what size engine? I guess I shouldn't say that. How do you have a vehicle and you don't know what his engine is in it? I don't get that. But anyway, I just can't process that. So anyway, we're gonna go out and take a look at this thing. And he said that it needs a tune-up or something, that it's really slow and it just doesn't have a lot of power. So I'm hoping that it has a V6 and it needs a tune-up, or we can correct that. We need to make this thing, you know, run good. Anyway, regardless of what happens, I got a smoking deal on it. I got more money than I wanted for my Scion, plus I got an extra truck. So, all right. So we're gonna head out there and we're gonna check this thing out. Okay guys, so this is our next victim here. This is a 1985 S10 square body pickup. It's actually pretty clean. It's only got, I don't know, 79,000 miles on it. But the challenge is we want to make this thing go faster. So I don't know much about this. First of all, we need to pop the hood. Hopefully it's a 4.3 liter. I have no idea what's in this truck. Please be a 4.3. Please be a 4.3. Oh no! So, for those of you that are not familiar with this, that is a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. They called that the Iron Duke. Had about 80 horsepower. So the challenge is to make this go faster. Okay, so yeah. Well, I guess the first thing to do is drive it. Okay. It runs. It's noisy. automatic transmission. Looks like a 4-speed automatic, so I'm sure it's a 700 R4 or a variation of it. Geez, it's idling high. All right, here we go. See if we can get out of here without hitting anything. Well, it doesn't have power steering, I can tell you that. I mean, I think it's supposed to, but the steering is definitely not power. Okay, so we're gonna get out here and stomp on the throttle, see what she'll do. What's pretty cool is actually there's a stretch of road here close to where we're at, where in the past we actually marked off a 1/4 mile, so we can see what this thing actually does. And there's very little traffic there, and I don't think this thing is fast enough to even exceed the speed limit in the 1/4 mile on that road, so we'll find out. That's floored right there. Oh, this thing is gutless. Okay, this is bad, guys. This is pathetic. All right, so I'm gonna turn my timer on. We got our 1/4 mile. There's no traffic here at all, so we got our 1/4 mile marked off up here. I hope you're not expecting a lot here, because I punched this thing to the floor and it is gutless. And this is our 1/4 mile mark right here. All right, here we go. Green box right there's a 1/4 mile. Okay. Not bad. Anybody want to take a guess on what that was? That was a 1/4 mile time. 19:13. So we got a truck that does 19 seconds in the 1/4 mile. It's got, you know, the engine runs smooth. It's a smooth running engine. I'm sure it gets good gas mileage. But the challenge is to make this truck go faster. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Not with this engine. We'll have to go back and see what we got. See what we can put in this thing. Or maybe we can modify this engine. I don't know. I don't know how easily you can modify it. Jeez. That's punched. You could drag race in this truck and nobody would know you were drag racing. People would just be driving by you normally, like driving a normal car in a normal fashion, and you could have this thing punched and they'd pass you. Yeah, this I don't know about this engine. We'll have to see what we can do here. Okay guys, so it's like a week later, and me and a couple of friends of mine came up with an ingenious plan to take the 2.5 liter in this S10 truck and triple the horsepower. So we kicked it around, we thought about how to do it, and our goal is to triple the horsepower. I think we're going to accomplish that
and the finished product is right underneath this bag. So I think you're going to be amazed at what we did to this thing. And we are pretty confident that we're going to, now that engine had about 80 horsepower, 85. We're pretty confident we're going to be able to triple that. Check this out. All right, here we go. 2.5 transformation. It has transformed into a Vortec 5.7 liter 350 with TBI serpentine setup on it. So this thing is kind of a Frankenstein deal. You'll notice that we do have exhaust manifolds on it. Keep in mind, we don't want to break axles on this thing. We want this thing to be a driver. So it has a about 8.5 to 1 compression. It has a really mild roller cam in it, but we're pretty confident we can get around 280 to 300 horsepower, which is more than enough for a 2,000 pound truck. So this is where we're going with this. And I know those of you watching that have been watching for a while are probably thinking, what about the big block 427 S10? That is still going to happen, my friends, but the logistics of putting a big block in the other S10 it's just turned out to be kind of challenging. I got to basically put a complete cage in it and tub the rear end and all kinds of stuff. And that thing's going to be a crazy street rod. This thing here, this S10, we want to use this for a parts delivery truck. We don't really want, we don't want to update the rear end or the differential. My understanding is that 4-cylinder rear end in there is a 10 bolt and it should hold up pretty good. I guess we'll find out. But once we get this in, we're going to see what this thing will do, how we can improve on that quarter-mile time and the performance of this engine, so this little S10 pickup. So, yeah, that's our next step. We have already started getting the 2.5 out. My helper's out there right now working on it, and in a little bit here we'll go out and check on the progress. What do you think, Steven? Piece of cake?
Piece of cake.
Okay, so we're getting closer to phase 1 here. So that is our hulking 80 horsepower 2.5 liter. And now we have a home, once it's cleaned up, for our new small block. Jeez, what were they thinking in the 80s? Goodbye, little buddy. Don't feel too bad. Engines just suck for no reason whatsoever. If anybody wants a good running 2.5 liter, hit me up. This is a decent running motor, but you know, 80 horsepower. I am not gonna miss it. Okay, so it's a couple days later, guys, and you can see what's happening here. The steering box was leaking, so I decided, you know, I probably need to change that steering box. And then I started looking at the ball joints and the bushings and the upper and lower control arms and the tie rods and the idler arm and the pitman arm, and I realized this, I mean, it wasn't that bad, but there's a V8 going in here. I still haven't gotten this side apart because, well, the sun's shining here now. I'm going to wait till a couple hours. I'll be in the shade here. I'm going to take this apart. I ordered all the parts for this, new brakes and everything. I don't know. I have this weird compulsion. Once I start doing something, I just can't stop. You know, my first thought was, oh, I'm just going to do a real quick delivery truck and we'll just slam the V8 in there. I also got the motor mounts coming that are going to work with the V8. Believe it or not, the 2.8 liter V6 mounts work with the V8 swap mounts, which is kind of weird, but that's the way it is. Transdap has a motor mount kit for this, but I just fabricated mine. I had a set of the Transdapt in the past, and I took the dimension off them, so I just plasma cut them out and made them. But the Transdap kit, motor mount kit's only $100, so definitely, I probably actually would have saved money if I would have just bought it, other than make it, but yeah, you know how that goes. So anyway, I'm gonna get this cleaned up. I gotta go to all the front end parts. Now, if you ever do this, one thing I would recommend, if you're gonna rebuild the front end, man, I've done a lot of front ends, and I can tell you something, it is so much easier to rebuild this front end when there is no engine in here. I mean, if you're gonna do this, I'm telling you right now, work on the front end and all this other stuff while the motor is out, because this was a snap. You get the motor in there and it's really hard to get to a lot of the upper bolts and stuff. So yeah. All right, so I'll give you an update here in a little bit. I know it seems like we were just driving this truck earlier in the video, but that was actually like a week and a half ago. So and what's cool is I actually have a styrofoam one. I looked for videos on the internet to see if, I don't know, there was any really good video on how to install a V8 and an S10, and there's quite a bit of videos on there, but a lot of them, man, the engine's already in and they're trying to show you, you know, give you a shot of the mounts down there and everything, and they're really tight and you can't see it. I actually have a styrofoam fabrication block that's a small block Chevy, and I borrowed a bare transmission case from my buddy, and so that way we can put everything in here, and I'm going to show you how the mounts and everything go, and all the challenges. I've done this a couple of times with small blocks, but it's been a long time. So yeah, anyway, I'll once I get all this front end crap ironed out and get all this cleaned up, we'll come back and I'll give you another update. All right, guys, so I'm going to show you a little trick here. This is the best degreaser you will ever find, short of taking your stuff to a machine shop. Now, let me give you some advice. Do not breathe the fumes from this stuff. They are extremely toxic. Also, when you spray this on your nasty oily parts, you need to be upwind. You need to protect your eyes, and you need to not breathe this stuff, because it is horribly toxic. Even though it's very good at getting grease off, it'll kill you. So easy off oven cleaner, not the no fume kind, but the actual oven cleaner works very well. So the wind is blowing away from me here. We're going to make sure that we're upwind from this stuff. And we're going to put it all over these nasty oily parts. We're going to get our sleeves for our tie rods. We're going to use those. Control arms. This one's not that bad. And also, you want to make sure you're outside when you do this. You don't want to do this inside. Once you're done, you need to wash yourself, your hands, your face, everything thoroughly. This is the transmission. We're going to go with a 700R4, built by my good buddy Tony B, who builds these to handle about 800 horsepower. This one's not built like that, but it'll definitely do just fine in our 300 horsepower little S10. New stall, slightly above stock speed converter. Stall speed of about 1800. The steering box was leaking like a sieve. It wasn't even hooked up on that thing, so we got a new steering box that we're going to add to that. Now, you saw the front end stuff we took apart. I'm not really going to do a front end rebuild video per se, but One thing I would say is when you buy the parts, we've got all our old stuff over there being degreased with the oven cleaner outside. What you want to do is you want to lay all these parts out, and as we take the old parts off, we got new tie rod ends, we got upper and lower control arm bushings, we got upper and lower ball joints, we got a new center link, we got a new pitman arm. These are our motor mounts, which, believe it or not, is a V6 mount. Now, I fabricated these mounts with a plasma cutter, and I just kind of duplicated a set of the actual mounts, swap mounts that I had. The only thing I haven't done is I cut this stuff out. I haven't welded these pieces in yet, but that's not a big issue. And they have the ability to, so these actually work with your 2.8 liter mounts, which is weird, but that's the way they designed it. You'd think it would have been a 4.3 mount, but those are different. And the 4-cylinder mounts, the 2.5 mounts I had on there, are definitely different. So we're going to get all of this front end stuff cleaned up and torn apart. I'm not really going to do a video on rebuilding the front end. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. It's actually pretty simple. But I will show you the finished product once we get all of the new front end parts in. Oh, the springs, you want to upgrade your springs. So what this is these are for an S10, but they are, what you want to do is you want to find the 4.3 liter with air conditioning. For some reason, the 4.3 liter S10 with AC has a heavier spring rate. The 4-cylinder and the V6 springs are all the same. Even the 4.3 spring is the same as the 2.5 and the 2.8 liter, and unless you buy the 4.3 with AC, they're about $30 more, but they definitely have more spring rate and tension to them. And my understanding is they work really good with a small block. It's not a problem. People run them all the time. But we definitely want to put new springs in there too. So, all right. Well, I'm going to get this front end stuff apart, and then we will. I'll be back when we get all that stuff reinstalled. So another tip on the steering box here. You want to make sure that your pitman arm is in the same orientation when this is in the center. Now, the nice thing about this new box is they've marked the center here. They put a mark here and here, and the pitman arm faces directly back toward the back, where your steering column hooks on there. So that pitman arm's going to go. We've got these both in the same spot. That pitman arm. Then now we're not going to pull this one off because I did actually find one, and my buddy Steven went over to Napa to pick it up. So once we get that, we'll get that arm and mount the box. Okay, so there's a new box, and we did end up all this stuff is new, all the tie rods. The one thing I did reuse the tie rods didn't come with was that tie rod sleeve down there, the sleeve that attaches those tie rods together. We didn't do that. We got the uppers in with the new bushings, and the next thing, of course, is we got to get those coil springs and lowers in. Those are always kind of tricky. I do have some spring compressors, so I'll probably compress the springs. I might just paint those calipers red too, just for the heck of it. Okay guys, so it's 10 o'clock at night and we got everything back together. Tie rods, new coil springs, upper and lower control arms with new ball joints and bushings. That's a totally stock caliper. We just painted it red so it would look cool. We had to get this done today, because if we don't have this done by the end of the weekend, we're going to lose the shop. Not really, I'm just kidding. But that's every show, automotive show on TV. But yeah, tomorrow I think I'm on track. Steven's coming over again, and we are going to put the plastic mock-up motor in here and try to test fit this. Hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow we'll have the actual engine in this thing.
Since I've been taking steroids, I'm just feeling really jacked. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just kidding, it's made out of styrofoam.
So the nice thing about having this thing is we're going to set it up in here. We can put our mounts on here. These mounts go on the block here like so, and they have an adjustment on them. And then we'll weld the other pieces in and get our 2.8 on. So we're going to put the mounts on here and see if we can. Well, I also have a transmission case we'll put on here. So we'll get out there and try to make this thing fit. We've gone to the next step here. Now I ran into a couple of issues. The nice thing is we took measurements for our serpentine belt setup, and it's all going to fit in here with the radiator installed. Now on this side you can see our mounts down here. We'll zero in on this. So that's the mount that mounts up to the block, and it has an adjustment here. This will slide back and forth. Right now we've got it pushed. Well, this is all loose. I'm not sure where it is, but we're able to adjust the mount back and forth. So the motor will actually move back and forth this way, one way or another. And it's kind of nice. We put an HEI in there, and in this mock-up block, it doesn't even go all the way down. You can see it's not all the way down back there. And even with it sitting there, we have room for our cap. So that worked out okay. One logistical problem we have here is if you look at this exhaust manifold over here, and you can see we've got our swap mount here. We actually took the bolt out of it because we're working on that, but with our exhaust manifold on this side, we are right up against the steering. Now, what I've done in the past, you can actually move that steering column over slightly, maybe an inch, inch and a half. I know when the guys put the big blocks in these, they have to do that. So that has some adjustment on it as far as loosening this up, and you can move it over. You kind of just have to work that out with where that steering ends up. So I think these manifolds will work. Now the beautiful part about this is, if you look all the way back there, we got clearance from the transmission to the firewall down there, and we got about an inch. And underneath, what we did is we went ahead and put the cross member in. We have a mock-up transmission. We just have a 700 R4 case in there. For case, we put the cross member on, and the cross member actually fits. I mean, in other words, it bolts right up. And also, the other thing is we measured the drive shaft, and the drive shaft is also going to work. So now that we've got all of that logistical stuff figured out, you can see we've got the cross member on there, and the cross member, I mean, it literally bolted right up in its original position, and the transmission mount went right in. We didn't have to finagle it or anything. So that, I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. One thing that I'm considering is we have these body mounts here. You can see that there's a body mount. There's multiple body mounts where the body sits on the frame. There's another one here. They have spacers for there. I'm thinking about actually raising the body a couple of inches. I don't want to raise it too much, mainly because if you raise it up too much, well, to be honest with you, it just looks stupid. So 2 inches you can get away with. So I'm thinking about maybe raising the whole body 2 inches, just to give myself a little more clearance here. It's getting pretty hot, so we've scheduled for next weekend. I'm going to pull the core support off of this thing, and then we're going to go straight in with the engine and transmission hooked together. Now that we know everything fits and we got enough clearance here for all of our serpentine set up, and it looks really good. We just needed a few tweaks, but other than that, it looks great. So you can see on the big block S10 project, I took the entire front clip off, and I have a video on that. I don't really want to do that to this other truck, but you can see without the front, even without that front core support here, it's going to be a straight shot in there. It's going to be a lot easier. So Alright, yeah, that'll be in the next video. And so that'll be coming up next. I probably won't film that till next weekend, but we're going to get the mock-up motor out and we're going to go for it. Okay, so we have evolved to the point where we're ready to put this thing in. The alignment is way off, obviously, because we didn't get the tie rods adjusted right. But we tried to, as best we can, get everything on this engine. And you'll probably notice that the core support is now missing. Steven came up with the ingenious idea to take the core support off so we didn't have to tilt this thing at 45 degrees to get it in. And I think he's probably right. I think it's best to just go in this way. So now that we've got it to this point, basically it's just a matter of stabbing it in there. We got our mounts welded up and on. We tried to put everything on that we could. Get the starter on first of all. Distributor is in and set in place. Carburetor's on. Detent cable. Make sure you put that in first. That'll be a hassle. He's out there cleaning up the transmission lines. And we are going to put the transmission lines on here first before this goes in, just to save ourselves some trouble. And of course we have the 1980s wiring harness here that's got way too much stuff on it. So we're just going to pull that up out of the way. And what's weird is on these, the fuel lines actually go through the frame underneath this motor mount area here. The fuel lines come up from the side of the frame and they come up through the frame here. I didn't want to mess with those. I just left them because I want to try to use the original factory pump and just regulate it down for the carburetor. That's kind of the plan at this point. And it is a tight fit in here, but it is an S10, so next step is we should be able to get this stabbed in there. So I ended up having to take a bunch of stuff off, like the manifolds and the starter, because it's pretty tight fit. Also had to take the motor mounts off. Now we're going to get the jack, because the engine's at this angle. The pan is kind of sitting on that cross member there. So we're going to get the transmission jack, and we're going to jack the transmission up to level it out this way, and I think it's going to slide right in there. So it's just a matter of finagling it in. A lot of logistics. What's up? It should normalize this thing. Go ahead. Okay, so I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is the engine is in, the motor mounts are bolted up, the cross member is bolted up, and the transmission mount is bolted up. This thing is in. The bad news is we thought the drive shaft was going to fit, but it doesn't. It's about 3 inches too long, so that's why Steven pulled it back out of there. So we had to get the drive shaft worked on, but it only took 2 hours, so piece of cake, right?
Piece of cake. It's like we didn't even do nothing.
Yeah, for 3.5, 4 hours we didn't do anything.
Yep.
So no, it was kind of a bear actually. And we got a lot of this 1980s wiring here, so still got to get the manifold. I still haven't totally figured out how to clearance the steering column with that manifold, but we will figure it out. But I'm happy with it because it is in. We no longer have to get underneath and jack the transmission up or put an engine hoist on it. So hopefully nothing happens that causes us to have to take it back out again. So I will be back when we make some more progress. So FedEx came bearing gifts today. This is a all aluminum fabricated radiator for the S10. It's only a 2-row, but they say, according to the literature I read on this, A lot of guys are using these and they say these are really effective at cooling even a performance V8, which we have basically a stock V8 in ours. So, and also 2 10-inch fans that move combined are going to move about 3,000 CFMs of air, 1,500 each. So at least that's what they're claiming. So we will find out. But yeah, turned out good. This is by a company. You can see the box over there. Champion. I'm sure it's made in China, so, but they guarantee it's going to cool this V8, so I guess we'll find out. All right, so we made some progress on the S10. You can see we got the core support back in, and also I went ahead and installed the radiator and the fans that we saw earlier. So the radiator is in. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to have to figure that out, but that's really not going to go like that. So the radiator mounts from the 2.8 or 2.5 I should say didn't really work, so I just went ahead and fabricated a mount out of some stainless steel stock that I had and bolted it into the same holes. It's not pretty solid, and I got the rubber mounts down on the bottom. I used the original shroud, the bottom piece of the shroud with the rubber mounts on the bottom, and then I just used this to lock the radiator in. I didn't really have the right wire for my MIG for this stainless, so it kind of looks like crap, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to paint that black anyway. So they're good enough welds. They penetrated. So the radiator is installed. A couple other things I want to talk about here. So now these headlights, guys, one thing about these headlights is the factory headlights, they have this adjustable screw in here, and there's a little plastic insert that goes in here. So this plastic insert kind of pops into the core support, and it has the ability to lock into place. Well, these always break. You're really not supposed to use these more than once. This is something that the factory uses just for ease of installation when they're on the assembly line. I'm telling you, you want some good advice here, don't use these. Just get rid of that crap. At the hardware store, for less than $5, I've upgraded the mounts for the headlights. These bolts for the headlights have a slot in them, and they fit right into that slot right there, and they're used, you run this in and out, and this is how you adjust the headlights. Is you want to set it up like this with one washer on either side of the firewall, and we've got this self-locking nut here that basically just goes in there like that. Okay, so you can see we got this first one installed, guys, and rather than having those plastic clips here, you can see we've got our new hardware, our nuts, our 1/4-20 nuts, and our washers. And then of course there's a spring that grabs it down on the bottom side. Now I have no idea if this is adjusted correctly yet. I don't know, but I'm not worried about that, because to adjust it, once I get everything back together, all I gotta do is loosen the nuts up on the front side, and then that self-locking nut on the back side with the big washer, and then I can run these in and out and adjust them. But that's a lot more secure than that plastic clip, and it's never going to come out of there. So okay, so I'm going to get the other headlight on this side, and then we'll start thinking about getting the grill and stuff up here and wiring those fans. I do need to make some transmission lines, because the transmission lines that were on the 2.5 coming up to the radiator are not long enough. I'm not sure why that's happening, but it's possible that I might put an external cooler on this. I don't know. But also there's a wiring harness. The wiring harness for the turn signals and so forth, that's what this is. That actually comes through this hole and goes across the front here and plugs in over here. So they run the wiring harness across the front. So we'll have to get that taken care of before we get the grill or anything on this thing. For now, that's about it. There's a lot of stuff I have to do off camera, but it's getting there, little by little.